Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. So while we still have Gareth with us, we're going to take advantage of picking the brain of a golf coach who literally works with the best players in the world.
Yes.
There's a reason these players are the best players in the world. Their routines are different, they do different things, they apply themselves differently. Of course, they're immensely talented, but it doesn't just come down to those gifts.
No.
There are things that they do that set them apart. And we want to talk about that. We're trying to pick 5 things that we feel that we can identify that the best players in the world do that the average player does not, and if applied could make significant gains to their game.
Yeah, that's just the thing. I think everyone immediately goes to, well, I don't have a PGA Tour coach, I don't have the best equipment, I'm not the best fitness, but a lot of these things are things you can change yourself once you have the awareness to them and kind of apply the right principles.
I mean, you played the game at an exceptionally high level, Gareth, so you enter into, with your own skills and kind of routines and strategy. You had a structure behind how to play well. And then obviously from a coaching standpoint, you've got Jin Young Ko, you've got Lydia Ko, you've got the Jitanigarn sisters, just to name a few of the stable. I mean, there isn't a coach in the world with a better, stable from a world ranking perspective. So you literally have a front row seat to how these best players become the best players.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we want to share. We want to take some of these things and show you how you could go out now and start to apply some of these things to get the best out of your game. And I think the first thing we need to talk about is getting off the tee.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to get the ball out, get the ball in play. If you can't get the ball in play, it's a tough game.
Yeah.
So you've got to get a shot and a shot shape. No matter who the player is, like Ariya Jutanigarn, doesn't like to hit driver.
Yeah.
So she always likes to hit down on the ball. And she's went to many coaches that have tried to get her to swing up. Because yes, and you'll know as a fitter, and you guys know, if we hit up, we're going to create less spin, the ball is going to go higher, and it's going to travel further. But she doesn't feel great and comfortable about doing that, so she'll want to trap the ball and squeeze that ball out there. And I always think, if you've got a fairway finder like that there, don't go changing it. Don't go standing up on the first tee feeling uncomfortable. Okay, my coach told me to swing up. Just get that ball out and play. That's what the range is for. That's what the practice is for. Go out and work on it there. And why don't we show you what we would kind of do in that situation here. So I think one of the biggest problems we get is that we know that we're supposed to tee it up a certain height because it optimizes so many things about that.
Yes.
But at the same time, and you will know more about this, Ian, is that as the driver is curved a lot more, as we start to hit it lower on the club face, the likelihood is that we'll start to cut the ball. And that cut now becomes a predictable pattern.
Right.
If you have a left and a right miss, maybe you pull it left and you hit a big slice, you're going to now eliminate that one side of the golf course. So now you can aim down one side of the golf course, tee it nice and low, and just go ahead and swing. Don't change anything with your setup. Don't put the ball back, put the ball anywhere else. Just keep it in a neutral position. And what we should see is a nice pattern.
So this is probably where I would tee my driver normally, a bit of the ball above the crown.
That's a great starting point.
Yeah.
Beauty, Matty boy. So there's your stop drop.
Yes.
Beautiful. As good as it gets.
It is.
310, handsome.
Now, it's a bit of trial and error to do this at the start, but the one thing we should have is we should eliminate one side of the golf course.
Agreed.
That should be the given.
So for me, obviously, we're going to try to make the strike go low. Chances are it would make sense for me to try to eliminate the right side, because this ball is likely to fade a bit with the low strike.
You got it.
Definitely feel like it could not do anything but fade.
Now, so now we've got a pattern, and now, obviously, the more you tee it up, the more you bring in the chance of that being a pull.
Yes. That's right.
And a very different delivery. I mean, 1.7 into out, 1.7 up. The previous one was 5 up and 5 into.
Pretty interesting, yeah.
The body is in a very different position to hit those 2 shots. Yeah, I mean that's the start line with your little bit of shape there. That's really
beautiful,
nice.
Especially from a drawer. Because this is the opposite to your normal path.
It is.
Okay, fairway finder, love it. Number 2, 4 footers. That's another one of the skills that you say, the best players, they clean up those four-footers so well.
They do, and you know, we can just talk about this here. So I have a ruler that I use quite often, and it was just designed out of. I used to go to Home Depot and buy these rulers, but they all kept warping, so I just needed something a bit better. And I figured if you're missing the short putts, it's because you're losing the face control of the putt.
Right.
You're not managing it from start to finish. So the big thing here is making sure that when you're setting up, if you have the ruler, getting that ball to start down the ruler. Now that means that you've controlled the face by plus or minus half a degree. To put that into context, if you hold a putt from 10 feet, you can be 1 degree off. So at half a degree, you're massively ahead of the game.
Yeah.
You know, what I see more often is people will get up, probably aim a little bit offline, and then leave the face open and close way too much, and they're giving away shots. You know, and it doesn't matter what level of player you are. I've seen 30 handicappers hit 6 or 7 down that ruler, no problem.
Yeah.
So there's no reason that you should be missing that many short putts.
Makes sense.
And that's something that you can do from the comfort of your own home.
It is.
You get the ruler, you set yourself up, and you kind of do 10 putts a night. It might take you 5 minutes to do it, and you're just ingraining that face control that then can transfer to the course. Number 3, get contact point with the wedges. And we've got a bit of a 3A, 3B scenario here. We've got a kind of sub point we want to talk about, but contact point.
Yeah, so the best players obviously hit it in the middle. You know, they hit it in the middle of the golf club. But not only did they hit it in the middle of the golf club, they hit it probably on the lower side of the middle.
Right.
You know, so down in on the front edge there.
Yep.
Now, to do that there, I have to deliver the club in a certain way. If I shaft lean it too much, it rises the strike point in the face.
You hit it high in the face.
So with the strike point being higher, we tend to get a much higher flight. Because the ball often, if you know, you're not playing on the PGA Tour, the ball, there's often a lot more grass at the golf courses that we're playing. So
True.
they tend to be teed up a little bit more, so then you get that strike moving up the face. So having the awareness of where the strike is on the face would allow you to be able to hit cleaner wedges, but also have that trajectory come out of the same window.
So it'll launch a bit lower than most people are used to,
Yes.
and it will in fact spin a bit more.
Yeah.
And those two things together, your distance should regulate.
100%, because you know, I bet you if people look at their wedges now, they're going to say, well, it's between here and here.
Yeah, sometimes.
When I blade it, it goes there, and then when I balloon it, you know. So if we could bring that up into a window where you're looking at it, I often think about like a building, like a 10-story building, and you're hitting wedges. Where would be a comfortable point for you? And if you can keep creating that strike through that window, you're probably going to be a really good wedge player.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's hit a couple of those, Matt. I've got your wedge kind of marked up here.
And we're going to do that there. Do we want to do it off the ground first or off the tee first?
You tell me. You want to do the tee drill?
Yeah, why don't we do that first?
It's a great little drill for it.
Yeah.
I think it really allows the player to come in and sort of sweep that. Now, if you come down and you destroy the whole tee and everything,
Yes.
probably not going to have the best delivery.
No.
You know, so your wedges are probably going to struggle a little bit. The pros will do this very nicely, and they'll pick it right off there.
So I'm aiming to, we obviously have pretty precise measurement that we'll show after, but from what I can see, groove 4, maybe
Yeah.
groove 5 at the highest is where I want to strike the center of the
That's
ball.
plenty, yeah.
Remember Aaron Bill saying on our podcast, he said that Group 3 was the target.
Groove 3 is target for like the absolute best
The
kind.
best players. And, you know, if we all think about the well-struck wedge shot, or especially around the green, it's not a high shot, it's not a high floaty shot.
No.
It comes in quite flat and bounce and has that stop to it.
Right.
It's all down to that strike point.
Yeah. Pretty good there.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Let's see what the, yeah, close.
Money.
Wonderful.
Absolute money. I mean, we talk about it in wedge fits, Gavin. You know, you're working with the best players, and when you go from the lesson tee to your home course, no disrespect to the amateur golfer, there's a stark contrast between the sound of the best players pitching and higher handicappers. And
Yeah.
that I could hear how good the quality was in that strike match.
And then obviously doing the opposite of that there.
So now we try to,
I wonder if I could even simulate here
okay,
a not so good tee
right.
Yeah.
and get you to hit it much higher up the club face.
So let's aim for the mistake, basically. Okay.
Look at the way it's running too.
Very different looking shot.
And we've all had that there. How many people have you spoke to that said, I can't get my wedges to stop on the green?
Yeah,
It's like,
that's why.
I think it's the clubs.
Yeah.
You know.
Everyone's had that one. The ball's sitting up a little bit in the rough around the green, and you do your best, to try and kind of strike it, but you see the bit of grass is left on the face, it's behind the blade, and you've left it in a bunker or something, and that ability to control the strike point, with an elevated golf ball on the ground, you being in control of that point, that low point, is so valuable. So let's talk a little bit about low point.
Yeah. So if you set up for me at the minute, we can show it with the camera here. The center point of your body would be considered our low point. So if I were to draw a line straight down here, if you swing the club back and through but don't move, there's nothing else that moves, like you haven't moved forward or backward, this would be considered the lowest point of the strike.
Right in line with the center of the body.
You got it, yeah. Now, if you're a person that has been really struggling with contact, you want to move that center point just a little bit further forward.
So that's just an upper body thing?
It is just an upper body thing, yes. And then from there, what's happened now is this low point is actually out here. So as this club comes down, you're going to strike the ball, and then it's going to go down in through the turf, and then the low point's going to be there, and it's going to rise. This is going to allow you to make good quality contact and strikes. Because you think about most people, they're chunking it more often than not.
So that's helping you take the chunk and the behind the ball out of play somewhat?
Yeah.
Your wrist could just be thin, if anything?
Yeah, and you can even build this all the way up to pitching. So if we take, and this is not talking about bounce, this is talking about low point, which is getting a good strike on the golf ball. Just moving the sternum slightly forward.
Okay.
Good, and then just hit it from there. Not changing anything else. And what you'll find is that you will get a much cleaner hit on the ball.
Yeah, that was 6 degrees down into the...
And you'll see the strike actually being higher because the low point, the club is still traveling down, so that strike will be a little bit higher on the club face. So certainly not a spinny shot by any stretch of the imagination.
But you're guaranteeing the strike?
Guaranteed. So if I was sitting on a little scruffy piece of grass, this is 100% what I would do.
Right,
I'd put the sternum there, I'd keep it there, and then go ahead and hit it. And that's
anything you're going to miss with a thin one?
I'm glad that you did that there, because that's just showing you if you've overdone it, the likelihood is you were still too much on the descent and you weren't able to manage it. So
you bring that back a little bit.
To me, I think this is a wonderful thing because that's that trial and error. You get a bit of learning.
So less lean forward if you start to see that shot.
Okay.
Just subtly.
Very nice. Lower strike point on the face there.
Yeah, nicer.
Very good. Manage that low point, better contact.
So you can see overdoing it could lead you to either being way too low with the contact or actually too high. And you mess around with it until you kind of find the right spot in the face.
And you'll notice that the pros do this all the time. Their low point is always on the target side.
Right.
Especially when they're trying to hit sort of a lower running type of a shot. If they're spinning it and using bounce, that's a totally different thing.
That's an important bit to add, isn't it? Because a lot of time we are, an advocate for slightly early entry into the turf to use that bounce and having the shaft kind of lose its lean. There's a time and a place for both of them.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. Okay. Number 4, I think, is a great one, and something that is Colin Morikawa is kind of making his way to the absolute top of the game. He's, from a distance control perspective, is doing that better than anyone since Tiger.
Right.
And his proximity numbers and strokes gained with his irons are showing that. It's really unparalleled. And the men's game right now. Let's talk a little bit about the keys to better distance control.
Yeah, so I think, if you don't have access to all of this gear, what we need to look at is the window that the ball is traveling out of. What trajectory is that ball traveling? If it's spinning up or if it's low or flat or whatever, we need to make sure that we can get that ball traveling more into that window. So, have you got an iron there?
Sure.
We can hit something?
Like an 8-iron?
Yeah, that's perfect. And what we would want to look at here is we're going to look at 2 different flights. We're going to give you your kind of normal flight, and then we're going to manipulate the flight in some way to see the difference that would have in distance control. Very nice.
So Matty Boy, his iron window, 117 feet to 122 feet normally, right? So it's coming in there at 113.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And launching at 20.
Perfect. Really
Okay.
nice.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to flight it down.
Okay.
You know, this is where people make a mistake, especially when we've done a video before about the difference in yardages. You
Yes.
know, when we move it around. So we'll put it back in our stance and a little more. Good. Hands forward a bit more.
So looks like to me I moved it about maybe 2 ball widths
Yeah.
backwards.
Yeah.
Hands are forward, maybe an inch or 2 more than
Yeah.
before.
And we'll just see what the window is like here.
Okay. Off lower.
Yeah. Certainly traveled further
Yeah,
anyway.
a little bit more on it, yeah. Yeah, ball speed was up. Spin rate dropped down 500. Launch angle dropped down 3.5 degrees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So when you've got those windows and those launch windows and peak heights changing so much,
Yes.
then you start to have that change in distance control.
Right.
When you go to a range at a PGA Tour event, what you'll notice is those balls are coming out in the same way every single time. It's almost like like if you stand at the airport long enough, you watch the airplanes, and they're all pitching out at exactly the same height every time. They're not, like, you don't have one jumping up and down.
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're trying to have that window be exactly the same every time.
Consistency.
Yep.
And that's partially how you control your setup, I would imagine. So control and practice with, remember you showed me kind of a
Yeah.
T setup.
Yeah.
Make sure your ball position is always consistent. Make sure you're not moving the sternum abnormally to what you normally do.
Yes. So you could go on a system. You could go contact. You know, if you wanted to make a little game out of it, get a point for contact, point for trajectory, point for distance control.
Right.
You know, 3 would be the execution part. So if you hit one for me and you're like, my contact was really good, you give yourself a point. My trajectory was really good, you give yourself a point. And if it landed in the right distance, you give yourself 3 perfect scores.
So would I try to, as a drill, duplicate this shot, for example?
Yeah. Or the first one maybe, because that's kind of your standard.
Okay, let's try to see if we can get the first one again. Strike is good.
Yeah, that's nice quality. What do we have to do to roll out this
Jared, that was 7 inches past the hole. Had a large entry or a good entry speed. Still didn't go.
So yeah, here's your flight window that I normally see you at. Like that's 119.7 on peak height.
Gotcha.
And that's for me is your stop ball flight. Lovely shape. Okay, last and definitely not least, there's a component, a wellness component that obviously when you play the game for your living, I think these players are so disciplined. And I'd love to hear your perspective on the players in the LPGA Tour, their level, their discipline when it comes to wellness. And we're talking about things like sleep, nutrition, all those things. How can the weekend warrior, the average golfer, implement wellness protocols to be a little bit better?
I wear one of these Whoop bands, and I really like it because, and I'm certainly no athlete to be speaking of, but I really like the metrics that it tells me. It tells me about my sleep, it tells me about my resting heart rate, it tells me if I'm stressed, These are things that we're trying to figure out with the players, So if you've got something big coming up, like Club C or monthly medal, whatever it is, you can be monitoring something even as simple as sleep. And you might not have one of these metrics, but you could just say, a journal like we talked about before, how would I rate my sleep? If you carry that over a period of time, that was like a 7. You can go back and you could look historically at the history. And what I always tell the players is you need to put the phone away 8 o'clock at night, 7 o'clock at night, and make sure you're doing it. Lydia Ko was one of the ones I said, I was like, oh, what are you doing tonight? She goes, oh, I got a tea time tomorrow at like 7, so I'll be in bed at around, or tea time, she has to be up at 4, so she'll be in bed at 7. So she's saying, I'm not going to go to bed at 10, I'm going to go to bed at 7. And a lot of the players, what they do, when they know they have that there, they'll start reorganizing their days beforehand, like 3 days beforehand. So now that their 10 o'clock bedtime becomes 9 o'clock, becomes 8 o'clock, and then it's not a big jump then to take it to 7, because you wake up and you're not used to being up. Your body has to readjust to that there, and a lot of people are just not good at that.
I think a lot of people like a 10:30 tee time, then maybe they can't get it one weekend. They get a 7. They don't change anything about their Friday night, whatever that means to whoever you are. And then they wake up in the morning and wonder why they feel terrible, and they play the front 9, 20 strokes worse than normal. So I think what you're talking about is cool because that's the peak performance of golf. That's the very pinnacle of it. But I think even for the average player, you don't have to go crazy, but you could make some adjustments to your sleep schedule, what you eat the day before, whether you choose to maybe have a beer rather than 3 or 4 before bed, to make the next round 10, 20% better for your performance. It's not that big of a deal when you think about how much of an effect it can have.
One thing on top of 5 others that you can do to make yourself a better player: club fitting, whether it's golf strategy, something like Decade or Arcos or something like that. All these technologies, like you pile them all on top of one another, you're going to see results. I mean, there's no doubt about that. These marginal gains that have been seen by these elite performance coaches. Great book. Dave Brailsford with the British cycling team, credited with kind of applying these marginal gains.
The 1% rule.
Yeah, the 1% rule. Just 1%. And Francesco Molinari applied that a few years ago, and that's what he said was the biggest difference in his game. It wasn't that he all of a sudden became an overnight better player. He just increased his performance by 1% in multiple different places. And that's what we're talking about here, just all these 5 different things that, there's more than 5, there's 105 that these best players do, but, if we're going to select 5 that we think people can do with fairly, minimal effort.
And high impact, right?
High impact, and quick as well.
Yeah.
And everyone's quick improvement. Guys, more kind of performance-related advice. It's great having Gareth. We pick his brain and this stuff all the time, and such great first-hand experience with the best players in the world, and try and pass that to you guys. We think if you implement even some of these things, we're not asking you to transform your routines or whatever it is, but implement some of these things, and you will see an improvement. And compound that with some work in your swing, some work in your clubs, and we think you'll be able to play the best golf you've ever played.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Okay, stay tuned for more on this.